Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So I've just come on today to do my Forex forecast. This will be the Forex forecast for the week commencing Monday the 4th of July. So guys, before I do jump into the forecast, I would draw your attention to the written version of this forecast. And as usual, this written version will be linked in the description. So if you guys want to check out the written version of the forecast, then just click the link in the description. Alright guys, so let's jump into it. So as usual, starting with Nzdusd today. Alright, so Nzdusd, what we've had this bearish break, which I spoke about last week, and then we've also had this bearish break, which I also spoke about last week. Now, what we've not actually seen at the minute is the next bearish break on the daily. So as it stands right now, we are in a range from this low here up to this high up here. So we are in this 300 pip range. Now, we do have a clear bearish bias because the last two breaks were bearish. So overall, I am expecting us to go bearish. However, like I say, we are within this whole range, so we could end up anywhere within this range at the moment as it stands. Now, that said, on the daily, within this range, we've got this area up here to sell from, and then last week I did speak about this 4-hour area here, which actually does have imbalance, which wasn't tapped into. So I do think we could see sells coming out of here as well as up here. But that said, for where we're actually at on the daily, we are just right at the low of this range, so it wouldn't surprise me if we do just see it continuing down now. And for that reason, I'm more interested in what's going on the 4-hour as it stands. Alright, so so looking at the 4-hour, our last two breaks of structure, the first one is from up here, and then the next break of structure is this one here. So the first place to really be following price away from this week is this point of interest here. So for me, when price does get up into this area, it makes perfect sense that the institutions will just continue selling away from there, and we will just see that bearish continuation to then break the structure on the daily. So for Nzdusd, I really think that the first opportunity for this week is just to look for sells out of there. Now, failing that, if that does break, for me personally, this one here is still a fully valid order block because even though it looks like it's been sort of tapped into, or it looks like price gone up there, it's not actually tapped into the POI itself. So whilst price has travelled up there, it's not in theory actually mitigated this order block. So for me, that's still a fully valid reaction point, and we could still definitely be seeing price come back up to here before selling off away from there. So for me, we've got this area here, and then failing that, I will, if we do end up breaking above here, I will expect it to basically transition to bullishness, and then I'll expect us to end up eventually back in this area up here. And then when we do end up there, for me, I do think it's absolutely fine to then look for sells, which will then take us into new daily lows. So on the 4-hour, based on what's happening right now on NZD, these are the two opportunities that I'm going to be looking at going into next week. So we will have to see what happens next week. Now, if this does fail to hold and then we start to see a bullish transition, you can obviously follow the new structures looking for buying opportunities to do the counter trend back up into this area and then potentially this area. So as well, guys, I would say if both of these areas fail, then technically we are still in a bearish bias on the daily, but it's not until we see this high broken up here that that daily bearish bias will be invalidated. So overall, we're definitely bearish, and I think the best opportunities are probably going to be to just be patient and wait for price to come into these bearish points of interest for sales. So that's me for the start of the week on Nzdusd. Alright, let's go over to AUD. So AUD, we've seen the break structure I spoke about last week, and we have now seen that follow through. So we've seen that next break structure. So really, for me, AUD, it's quite simple this week. We've basically just looking at a bearish situation, and we're now looking for a bearish continuation. So considering the structure broke here, the origin of that structural break was this high here, which is this wick. Now, for me, it makes sense that price will stay now below this wick. So what I'm expecting is price to retrace either into this area or deeper into this area here. And once it has retraced into one of these two areas, then I am expecting the sell-off for that bearish continuation on AUD. So I'll just take you guys to 4-hour now. So looking at the 4-hour, the actual thing that caused them, the actual point which caused the most recent boss and the most recent impulsive move was this one here. So that lines up with the one I just showed on Nzdusd. They're very similar in appearance. So for me, it does just make sense for price to travel back up into this area, and then we will just start to see price selling off from there. Now that said, though, just because on the daily we've got this wick here, which grabbed liquidity from the previous wicks, and that is where the actual high is. Now, when we go down to the 4 hour, if we look, we've got imbalance here. So below this candle here, before that one, we've got that imbalance, and obviously there will be liquidity above this point here, which is the 4 hour point. So for me, whilst yes, this is fully valid point because that's caused the most recent impulsive move, what really wouldn't surprise me is if we actually see this point here violated, we see price come up into this area, which is the actual daily order block, and then we will see price move away from the daily order block after taking liquidity above this high. So for me, that's what I'm expecting on AUD USD this week. Provided that this structure holds, I would expect one of these situations to play out. So that is what I'm going to be looking at this week. And then obviously if this structure at the high breaks, then I'll have to change analysis and look at the situation with a fresh perspective. So that is AUD USD this week. Moving on to pound dollar. Alright, so pound dollar, the daily situation's not changed from last week. We're still between the low down there and the high up here. We've got a bearish nature because we've had break structure bearish, and the previous one was also, we also had that one bearish. So we know that we're looking for sells overall. Now on the daily, we've got clear imbalance here, and we've got this big buy candle which then caused the impulsive sell move. So really, from a daily perspective, it does make sense now for price to retrace up into this area, mitigate any remaining buy orders that institutions have got open, and then once we're in that area, we will then just sell off to break new structures on the low. So really, looking at the daily, that's my expectation on the pound dollar. Now, that said, though, we have just got this law here. I mean, there's no real specific reason why the banks have to come up into here. You know, maybe it was enough for them to bring the price back up here, and now they've just started that bearish order flow to take us lower. So whilst on the daily, if we do start to see that bullish structural transition on the 4 hour, then we know why, because we're coming up here to mitigate the daily order block. And while that is true, what I do think is that at this point we should just be aware of what's happening on the 4 hour. So last week, based on the fact that I was expecting price to come back up into this area, I was looking for buys out of this wick here. As you can see, we got a small reaction, but then that didn't actually follow through, and what we got was price has just continued bearish, and we've now seen that 4 hour bearish break structure. So looking at where the 4 hour bearish break structure originated from, it really originated from this candle here. So for me, I do just think that until we see this broken, we do have to just expect that pound dollar now is just going to continue bearish. So based on that, I will be looking to continue bearish myself out of this 4 hour order block, and then we can just look for it to continue through the low. So guys, that is pound dollar for the 4 hour. I'm looking at continuation of this most recent bearish break structure, and then on the daily, just because of where we're at in price, I am still expecting price to come back up here. So we'll have to see if that happens, if the 4 hour is respected or not, and then if 4 hour is not respected, I will be expecting the daily situation to play out as forecasted here. Alright guys, so euro dollar. Alright, so euro dollar, the actual situation is pretty much identical to last week. So overall, we know we're bearish, so you know, the overall trend is definitely bearish. Now, recently though, we have had this bullish boss that's left behind this order block down here, and price went into this order block, and now we're still not broken below the order block. So for me, at this moment in time, price is essentially being supported by the institutional buy volume coming out of this order block here. Now, last week, what I was forecasting is we have this 4 hour break structure, so we have this 4 hour bullish order block coming away from the daily, and I'm expecting price to come out of this order block into and then push us up into this big sell or B so that we can then continue down. So still for me, since we've only wicked below it, that's a liquidity grab. So what I'm still expecting now is that price is going to flip bullish and we're going to now start to see price coming up into here. So based on what I'm seeing, that is what I'm expecting, that price is going to now start to buy up and then come up to here. Now that said though, at the end of the day we are in a bearish trend, and you know we're not far from making new lows. We're less than 100 pips from making, you know, not all-time lows, but pretty much based on a recent time period. So considering that, forecasting buys is like basically a counter trend move, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if this entire buy situation just doesn't hold, and what we see is just a massive amount of institutional sell volume coming into the market. So guys, if we do see a situation where the buys don't hold and we just see that continuation of sells downwards, then what I will do is mark up the new break structure on the daily, and I will assess the situation looking for a place to sell from following that failure to hold of this buy move, and then I will look to sell following the new break structure. For example, if we did just break, we might end up seeing something like that. So if we do break, I would be open to following something like that. But guys, we'll see what happens, because to be fair, this situation's probably going to take all week to play out, so you'll see it next week on my forecast what happens. So well guys, that is what I'm expecting this week on EU. If we do see this low broken, then I would recommend following the 4-hour and daily structures to look for selling opportunities. But that is EU this week. Alright guys, now finally, pound yen. So on the pound yen, we are still in a bullish trend overall. So we had these two consecutive breaks which set the trend as bullish. Now what we've been left with is this extreme at the low here. So for me, until we see this point broken, this is going to be a valid area to buy from. So regardless to what happens between now and then, if price ends up back down here, then I will be looking for buys out of this zone. It is still quite a big zone, it's like 200 pips, but I will be anticipating a reversal for buys to then continue into new highs once we get down here, if we do end up down there. Now that said, right now the most recent boss on the daily is this bullish leg here. So we've got this high and this low. Now within this whole move, so basically within this move we've got this order block here, and I am expecting price to now continue higher from this order block. So what's happened, we tapped into the order block on the 4-hour, and then we saw that structural transition into bullish on the 4-hour, and then we've left behind this candle here. Now for me, I am still anticipating buys to be coming from this candle now to follow through with the daily, and what we've seen at the end of last week is that price has actually reacted off this area here. So for me, until we see that low broken, I am expecting buys out of this area, which will then continue the daily and hopefully take us into new daily structures. So pound yen this week, I'm absolutely happy to look for buys either now continuing from this reaction, or we'll get a reaction deeper inside the point of interest and we can look for buys out of there to then take us into new highs. So for me on pound yen, that's my main expectation. That's the thing that I'm seeing first. Now what I'm also aware of, we have broken structure on the 4-hour, alright, and that structural break really did just come from this candle here. So when we do get up there, what we could see is that price actually does fail to go higher. We start to see that full bearish transition coming in on the lower time frames, and then price will just go lower from this area. So for me, I am definitely in an overall bullish bias, and hopefully we can just see price continue out of this area and then continue to buy up there to break new highs. But we know that we've got a reason to come lower in the form of this huge daily bullish OB down here, and we can see that the 4-hour has also broken bearish in a pretty efficient way, because we don't really see much imbalance until this point here. So there are a lot of confluences for the sell thesis as well, and it won't surprise me at all if we do end up selling from there. So guys, you know, there's not super large amount of clarity this week on pound yen, but at the end of the day, where we're at with it right now is we can look for buys out of here and we can look for sells out of here, and then we're going to have to see how the situation plays out before we then look to see how we expect it to continue away from there. So guys, that's pound yen. I hope that wasn't too confusing. It's not the cleanest pair at the minute. There's quite a bit going on the screen. But that's what I think is going to happen. So guys, thank you very much for watching the forecast, and I hope that you guys all have a safe trading week this week. Stick to your trading plans, stick to your risk management, and don't overtrade, guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, and I'm very grateful if you do. And I will be releasing more content in future. So guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a safe trading week.